Hi, it's Friday, December the 20th, and this finishes off a week of reading Christmas stories. At least reading the stories of Jesus' birth in Luke's Gospel and Matthew's Gospel. So, our basic Christmas stories in the Christian tradition. So, we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We were in Luke, and we heard all about Mary having to make up her mind, and we heard about angels and shepherds. At the end, we heard about Anna and Simeon, and it was all lovely and beautiful. Yesterday, we switched over to Matthew's Gospel, and we heard right away about Joseph and his decision making. And today we're going to wrap it all up, and we're going to hear about Magi and gifts, which is great. And then we're going to hear about death and destruction, which isn't so great. An interesting balance between Luke and Matthew. Anyway, so having completed that, next week is Christmas. I'm taking the week off. I know, I've taken so much time off. Like, I took 3 weeks already. This is crazy. But I am going to take the week off, and we'll be back at it on Monday, December the 30th. All right, so just taking Christmas week off because lots of other stuff going on, and that's just what I'm going to do. And then on December 30th, we'll come back. We could come back to Deuteronomy, but I'm thinking maybe we're going to do something new because, I don't know, I just think we've gotten everything we're going to get out of Deuteronomy. Anyway, show up on December 30th and be surprised. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so here we are right now, and it's Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 18. Strap in. It's a long one. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For so it has been written by the prophet, quote, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" End of quote. Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They knelt down and paid him homage. They opened their treasure chests. They offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, quote, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." When Herod saw that he'd been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated. And he sent and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah, quote, "A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing in loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled, because they are no more." There you go. Not the happiest way to end a week of Christmas readings. But nevertheless, there it is, and it's a story we don't get in church very often, right? Sometimes, if you come to church the Sunday after Christmas, you might get it. But sometimes we like to skip over it because, it's called the slaughter of the innocents. We don't want to hear about killing children. But I'll get to that, I think, in a minute, because goodness knows I could just focus on that, and 25 minutes will go by like that. So I want to talk about a couple other things first as we go. As I was reading and listening to myself, I know the story very well. I have preached it. There's a thing I love preaching about this story, so I don't want to fall into those notes. So I was listening to it freshly. It's like, wait a minute. And so what strikes me, of course, right away is how this does not fit into the Christmas pageant. But you probably already know that. The Luke story of the birth of Jesus and the Matthew story of the birth of Jesus, they don't fit at all. You really, really have to stretch any kind of credibility to try to make them fit. Little things you may have noticed right away. Things like when they came to the house, right? It said, looking for the line, on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and knelt down and paid him homage. What do you mean they entered the house? I thought they were in a stable. Wait, I heard once it was a cave. I got to be a cave, but it's supposed to be a stable. But isn't the baby Jesus in a manger? Because when we do it in the pageant, there's always it's a manger, and they come down and they kneel down. And yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. We're not quite the same. Now, we could talk about the fact, and I think I've already mentioned it earlier this week, that people kept their animals inside with them very often and slept up in a loft. So you could come into the house where the animals are. So you could sort of make it work that way. There is the tradition of Jesus having been born in a cave. Well, maybe they were living in a stone dwelling. Maybe they were living in a cave. Doesn't seem as likely in the middle of Bethlehem, but these things are possible. But also look at the timing. Maybe they've moved on from the manger. Maybe it was born, placed in a manger for a minute, nice photo op, and then they've moved on and into another location. I guess the star would have followed them. So now they're in a house. Because if you take the story at face value, these wise people, magi, astronomers, we think quite credibly these people sort of represent Zoroastrians. But the thing is that they saw something in the heavens to indicate the birth of Jesus. And so they're following it. Well, so then that thing in the heavens wouldn't happen until Jesus was born. So now they got to see the star. They've got a provision for a journey, follow the star. Along the way, by the way, they're going to stop and have a chat with Herod. Then they're going to follow the star. So this is not something that happens in the same night. It's not like the shepherds, come down to see the baby Jesus because the angels just told them about it, see the baby, and then they move aside so that the Magi can fit in. We do that in the pageant, but that's not how it is here in the text. This is sometime later. And in fact, when Herod gets upset, kills all of the children 2 and under according to the time that Herod was told by the Magi about when the star appeared. So this may be 2 years, or as many as 2 years later. So they don't fit right in together. So in 2 years, are they still in Bethlehem? I guess they are. But have they moved into a house? Maybe. Well, why haven't they gone back to that? Like, it doesn't make any historical sense. At least trying to harmonize the two doesn't make any historical sense. Matthew takes great pains to point out how prophecy is being fulfilled. That's a big thing. We have the Magi, inspiring basically Herod's wise people to say, there's that prophecy. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who's to shepherd my people Israel. Okay, so we got to put him in Bethlehem. That makes perfect sense. We also have to fulfill, out of Egypt I've called my son. Later on, not in this chapter, but in the next chapter, when they come back from Egypt, they go to Nazareth because prophecy says he has to be a Nazarene. The slaughter of the children fits really nicely because we had, again, Jeremiah, another prophet, said that the voice was heard in Ramah, wailing in loud lamentation. So Matthew is doing everything he can not to fit into a historical timeline, not to fit into a story by Luke, which Matthew may or may not know, but in fact trying to fulfill prophecy. And choosing which prophecies we fulfill, right? In Luke, we're fulfilling Isaiah. The virgin shall conceive and gives a son named Emmanuel, etc., etc., etc. So that's, but here Matthew's fulfilling other prophecies. The point that Matthew wants to make, same as Luke wanted to make, is that Jesus is in keeping with the Jewish tradition. That Jesus is not at odds with Judaism, but fulfills the prophecy. Now, that isn't to say, in my mind, living here now in 2024, that isn't to say that Christianity is meant to replace Judaism. That isn't like to succeed it. It isn't meant to say that Jesus is that Jesus is the only way to look at things now. Jesus rewrites it all. No, Jesus fulfills it. So in fact, if you are devoted to Hebrew Scripture, if you are a Jew, your access to God has not been denied. Your access to divine wisdom, to your relationship with God is not nullified. But what Matthew wants us to know, I think, what Luke wanted us to know, though, is that there is a transition available. They don't have to be at odds with each other. There shouldn't be a tension. But attitudes create tension. So when I say, yes, my Jesus fulfills all the Jewish scripture, so stop reading the Jewish scripture, just come over and hang out with my Jesus, the people who have built their lives in devotion to that scripture and built their relation with God based on that are like, why are you telling me my faith is useless? I don't think that had to be. I don't think that was the point. I don't think that Matthew or Luke were trying to erase Judaism. I think they were trying to reform it, inviting Jews into recognizing that Jesus is the manifestation of the same God that Abraham knows, that Moses knows. But anyway, that's but I think that's the important part. But when you try to fit them together, it makes you crazy. So when I listen to this story, when I hear myself reading it, I guess I immediately appreciate that it is outsiders who get who Jesus is, right? These wise men, these Magi, these who, by the way, aren't three. I mean, there's three gifts, so we make them three, but there's nothing here in the text that says there's three. It's just there's some. So some astronomers, that's their wisdom, the wisdom of the stars. They, by following their own faith, recognize that Jesus is something special and come to pay him homage. They bring their gifts. I love the idea, though, that outsiders recognize who Jesus is, while others may not, while the people right there may not recognize. The shepherds do because angels told them. Did the neighbors recognize that Jesus was something special? I don't know. Certainly we're going to go through a story of Jesus. It appears that Jesus is trying to reform Judaism, and they're not getting it. At least not all of them. But these outsiders do get it. So I think there's something in that about opening ourselves up beyond our tradition. At least there is for me. So I can learn a lot about Jesus from my Jewish friends. I can learn a lot about Jesus from my Muslim friends. But both of them are tied to a tradition that includes Jesus. But I can also learn a lot about Jesus from my Buddhist friends who come from a totally different tradition, from my Hindu friends, from Zoroastrians. I happen to know a couple of Zoroastrians, actually. In hearing them talk about their faith, I can learn something about Jesus, whether they explicitly say so or not. I can listen to their wisdom, to their experience, and I come to understand a little bit about who Jesus is to me. When I listen to my indigenous siblings, to talk about their faith and where they have found an understanding that includes Jesus in their faith that is Christian and yet also very authentically indigenous. That is a different tradition altogether, but they have found a way. And as I listen to it, my understanding of Jesus grows and changes. I don't need to be at odds with them. I would also, this is just my mind continuing to go. So these Magi came. These wise people came, and they offer their gifts, and then they go home. It doesn't say that they converted to Christianity. It doesn't say they converted to Judaism. It doesn't suggest for a second that they stopped being whatever they were before. As I say, most scholars would think these were Zoroastrians. They didn't suddenly give up the Zoroastrian faith. No. They came and they learned something. They got something from Jesus that helps their faith, and they gave me something that helps my faith. But neither of us had to convert the other. No pamphlets were dropped off, right? They brought gifts. They came. They shared the bounty of their faith, and the bounty of my faith, which is just starting at this point. This is Jesus, is a gift to them as well. I would really love to live in a world where that's what we did with our faith, where we recognized it as a gift that we could share with others, but the gift is not, I'm going to make you like me. What I want to do with somebody who is not Christian is I want to love my neighbor, and I want to love them as my neighbor, as exactly as they are, not as a possibly one day you'll be like me. Not a potential convert. I'm not out to bring you on side. I just want to love you as a neighbor. I want to reveal God in the way that I interact with you. I want to share with you my understanding of grace, because maybe the way you express your faith and live your faith, grace isn't a thing that you articulate. And yet maybe it is. And maybe from your faith, I can learn how my understanding of Jesus, my understanding of God, ties more deeply into the natural world around me, or how it is reflected in the stars. I don't know, but I want to learn from you. I want the gifts of your faith, even as I offer you the gift of mine. But it's a gift exchange, not an invasion. Not an occupation. I don't have to come and take over your faith. I just want to offer you the gifts of mine. Because that, to me, is what happens in the story. And I think that's very powerful. We overlook it when we talk about the gold, the frankincense, and myrrh, and we talk about symbolically what those things are. They become very Christian in the symbolism. Gold is for kings. Frankincense is for embalming a dead body. And myrrh is for burning in prayer. So this is recognizing Jesus who Jesus is, but Jesus's full revelation will be revealed in his death and in like all of that. That's great stuff, and I'm not knocking that for a second. But we get all wrapped up in that, and we just sort of miss the very basics. They brought gifts that we don't understand, that don't make a whole lot of sense. How amazing is that when that happens? When people bring us gifts that we may not understand, but we receive them and we come to understand them over time. I can spend a lot of time with that. I'm already pushing 20 minutes, and I haven't talked about the slaughter of the children yet. So Herod, I very often preach this story in contrast with the Simeon and Anna story in Luke, where we have an old traditional couple, but Simeon's an old man, and I compare him up nicely with Herod, who's an old man as well. Both traditionalists, one ready to embrace change, to see God in the world and embrace that. And so Simeon dies in peace, whereas Herod is terrified of change. Doesn't like the idea of seeing God in the world. And so responds in a way that leaves him desperate, paranoid, and afraid. Okay, there. That was my whole sermon. Just saved you 18 minutes. You can figure out the rest. But never mind comparing to Simeon. I just look at Herod alone. So Herod hears there's a child born king of the Jews. Yeah, we saw a star, it's rising. We've come to pay him homage. When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. He was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. What's going on there? Why is he afraid? Why is he afraid? Well, on the face of it, I mean, this child's going to be king of the Jews, but Herod's king of the Jews, so Herod is afraid for himself. Herod is afraid of what this might mean to him. And Jerusalem's afraid because, well, if Herod's afraid, they know Herod's going to get crazy. They're worried about that. Yeah. But I also think that in our day and age, seeing God in the world can be a frightening prospect. We don't always want to see God in the world because we've already figured out how to get through the day. We have our routines, we have our faith. You know, we say grace before meals, we go to church. Yeah, a lot of Sundays we go. Occasionally say a little prayer here and there. And I've got just enough of that in my life. I can call myself spiritual. I'm even religious. I've got it covered. And then I got the rest of my life, and I've got it all sorted out too. I know how to relate to my partner, to my children, to my workers, co-workers, all that. I got it all figured out. And someone once described a life of quiet desperation. But if it is that, at least I figured out how it works, and it could be worse. And so I'm just happy to keep it the way it is. Or my life is actually working out quite well, thank you very much. Feels pretty good to me. I don't want to mess with that either. I'm sure I've reflected before. If you've spent time with me, you've heard me reference how so many of my friends years and years ago would insist that I had to go to India. Norm, you got to go to India. It's amazing. It'll change your life. And my first thought was, I don't want to change my life. So I'm not going to India. I like my life. I don't think that I want to change my life. I like it. I think a lot of us like our lives, or we're used to our lives, and therefore we are afraid of change. We don't want to see God in the world. What if I see God in the world and it makes me want to quit my job? What if I see God in the world and it makes me want to change something that I've been doing for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 60 years? No, I don't want to upset that apple cart. That was, yeah, but you're going to see God in the world. Don't you want to witness that? No, I don't. You know what I want? I want stability. Jerusalem's afraid that Herod. Jerusalem is frightened because Herod is frightened. Maybe what Jerusalem likes is stability. Whether it's just and kind, fair, good or not, the fact is it's stable. Thank God. We'll just keep it stable. Just keep it the way it is. It's not great, but it could be worse. And we're frightened of change. Well, that's the thing with faith. Faith comes up and sort of wakes us up. God appears in the world, and we hear there's change coming, and it's going to be good. Yeah, but what if it isn't? I don't know if I can trust it. I don't know. You really want to see it? And so I resist it. I resist that call from God. I close my eyes to God in the world. I stay focused on my version of stability, keep things the way I want them to be. And then I start to become very paranoid and worried that people are trying to take my faith away from me. There's a war on Christmas, you know. There's no war on Christmas. No one's trying to take my faith away from me. But I start to get paranoid because the truth is I don't want to see God in the world. I just want to see me in the world. I figured out how to be me in the world. I don't want to see God in the world. I don't want that kind of change. But that paranoia keeps up. And then you know what happens? I actually end up killing the very thing that would give me hope. Killing the very thing that would make life better. And there's our slaughter of the innocents. There's the death of these children. Is this a real historical event? There's no record of it being one. Doesn't mean that's, how many kids under 2 were there actually in Bethlehem? We're not talking 1,000, right? So maybe it actually happened and wasn't recorded. But that would be odd. So many things, killing children, that kind of thing somebody writes down somewhere in a diary. So there is no record of it happening. So maybe it didn't happen, but maybe it did. But I do know that when I get paranoid and try to protect my faith and stop it from growing, stop it from changing, I end up killing the very thing that I was holding on to. I was trying to hold on to hope, hold on to my relationship with God. Don't change a thing because I've got this relationship. Yeah, but because I'm not willing to change, I kill that relationship. I kill hope. I kill the future. And I end up stuck in the present until the present becomes the past. And now I'm just stuck in the past. You see how badly I want to preach this. But there it is to me. That's what's going on in the story. This is what's always been going on in the story with me. Just I come at it from different ways. And I think it's actually a good way to end Christmas, actually, Christmas reflection. So it is a good way for me to end, because the truth is, Christmas comes every year, and it's tempting to keep it the same year after year after year after year. I know the story. I know that I sing the same carols. I have the same dinner. I invite the same people, right? And the thing is, the more I try to keep things the same, the less I am actually open to the miracle of Christmas, which is to see God in the world. That's who Jesus is. Jesus is God in the world. That's what we're meant to see. If I keep things the same all the time, I miss the opportunity to see God in the world. All I see are reflections of what I used to do. And I'm shaped by the paranoia of don't you dare change it. We have to have turkey. We've got to have mashed potatoes. We better have the same gravy. I'm invited to open my mind, my heart. I'm invited every year to let Christmas change me. And what I have to ask myself every year is, did I let it change me this year? Has Christmas changed me at all? I'm going to leave it on that note. I've really enjoyed spending this week with you. I hope that it's been fruitful for you too. I hope it's been worth your time. And I do hope you come back on the 30th when I'm going to surprise you, and we'll see what we're going to do. Anyway, until I get to see you, have a very Merry Christmas. And please, let it change you. Spend some time wondering. And know that Christmas is a blessing. And it is literally God's love coming to be with us in a manger long ago, in your heart, in this moment right now. And that love doesn't just stay with you. The baby Jesus grew up and moved on. That love comes to you, comforts you, and moves through you and changes the world. You not only receive the gift of Christmas, you are the gift of Christmas because you share that love. Please remember that. Have a magnificent Christmas, and we'll see you soon. God bless.